big opening there towards South was, and then back farther in. I worked a bird for 2 hours.
Alrighty.
Fence and I shot him with a bow. And then ran it.
All right, everybody, welcome to the Monday, April 28th Finance Committee meeting. I just wanted to start the meeting by reminding folks that any questions asked at the prior meeting are available online on the budget tab of the website for you to review. Helene, in just a moment, is going to review some of the cost savings, as I know that was a question last time. And then the other thing I wanted to suggest prior to going through this, unless anyone has any objections, is that we have a final budget meeting prior to the May 5th Town Council meeting, just to have some final discussions before we go into the council meeting that night and vote. So unless anyone has any objection to that, that would be Monday, May 5th at 5 p.m. You okay? Cool. We can get that on the books. And then, Helene, if you don't mind starting with some of the cost savings that you outlined in an email to us, that would be great.
Sure. It's also in the Q&A section, since that was something that was provided to the council last week. So year to date so far, what we're looking at is $2,500 and $25.98 from technology. That was the adjustment we did for the two software programs that we realized were duplicate. In the fire department, as you remember, we discussed where the fire department came back, adjusted their overtime as well as their per diem. And so that came up with a $69,287 adjustment. And then Assistant Town Manager Bolduc, he's noticed that we had $600 for advertisement in the waste disposal budget. So he was quick to tell us we didn't need that budget line. And then some potential savings that we have. So as I advised the council, Town Manager Sturgis, Assistant Town Manager Bolduc, and myself had a meeting a couple of weeks ago with our insurance agent. And we had gone out to bid for our health insurance. And so the market had given us a -3 insurance renewal rate. As if you remember, in the budget itself, we were anticipating budgeting with a 3% increase. So that would be a 6% savings on our health insurance lines across the town. We did actually, probably 10 minutes after I sent the updated email on this information, we actually got information from our insurance agent who had went back to our original carrier, Harvard Pilgrim, and they matched the -3. So we're going to stay with our current carrier of Harvard Pilgrim with the -3 insurance renewal rate. We were also advised by our insurance agent that we could go for a private through a private insurance carrier for our PFML. That's the paid family medical leave that the state had implemented. That started on January 1st of 2025. So she said that if we were to go with private insurance, we can forego paying insurance or paying contributions for the next 18 months. And so that calculated to an additional $25,400 in savings towards our general fund budget. So with all those savings, we have a total so far of $197,885 in savings. That equates to a 2.7% increase over last year's budget, where originally we were projecting a 5.07% increase on our budget.
Can I get a paper copy of that?
Absolutely. Also, I just want to let you know, I also did speak to our other insurance carrier for our liability insurance. They have not quoted it yet, but she is planning on quoting with some deductibles. So we could just see what that looks like and determine whether or not that's, advantageous for us to take advantage of increasing those deductibles.
My second comment on that is I'm going to urge the full council that we institute a insurance committee, if you will, to for yearly review. I think that if we, my professional who sits over my shoulder there has suggested on any number of occasions how important that an insurance committee would be, and so I think we should explore that. I think there's enough professionals in the community that we could get enough people to volunteer for something like that, much as we do with any other committee, and just have a review process. That's it on that.
I just want to say great work, Helene, I think, and Chris, I know you guys both worked hard on that, and I think it's great to see that amount of savings. I know that we're really trying to be as mindful as possible as we move into this budget season, knowing how much is on the horizon. So I think that's a great win, and I really appreciate all your hard work on that. Did anyone have any other questions about what Helene just went over before we jump into reviewing the budget?
I would second that, what you said.
Yeah.
I wasn't.
Thank you for coming back.
I didn't think we needed an insurance committee to look over your shoulder.
Bob, just make sure you're speaking in the mic.
Yeah, Bob.
Yeah, okay. Did everybody hear me?
No, I have a question. On the going to private for the yes, that. With the, like that 18-month offset or whatever, I don't know how many years the contract is, but over the life of the contract, I'm sure it like evens out or we end up ahead overall prior compared to, not doing private.
So going private requires us to do a 3-year commitment, which means we can't go to another insurance carrier for 3 years. And then they guaranteed the rate the first year.
Okay.
So right now, through the state, the insurance is 0.5% for the employer and 0.5% to the employee. The carrier actually gave us a renewal rate of 0.45 for each, so 0.9% on the contribution going into after the 18-month
Okay.
wait.
Cool. Thank you.
One other question about the paid family medical leave. Is that is currently on the docket for the current administration? So should we sign a contract for 3 years and then that's negated? What would be our exit strategy on that? Would we exit that? What would be the plan?
So that's the reason why we did that, was
Okay.
because it would help us delay to see
Okay.
what would happen, because then we would not be obligated to continue the insurance through the private carrier.
Awesome. And then Matt, did you have any updates as well? Are you good?
No, I'm good,
You're
Madam
good?
Chair. Yep, I'm good.
All right. Awesome. If everybody's all set, we'll jump into capital. No, totally fine. 9:10.
Yep, debt service. Yeah. Yep.
So with our capital reserves, this account basically allows us to take what each of our departments would need for capital outlay, whether it's vehicles, equipment, and whatnot, road paving, and this is kind of like what our strategy is for going out. So in your actual binder, you will see, like, so for instance, the building reserve, take 50,000 and we move it to the building reserve account, and then that is what the assistant town manager uses towards anything that might have break fix kind of need for any of the buildings, or whether there's furniture that's needed. We use that funding for that 50,000. Then we have the environmental reserves. So this is, again, we take this $32,000 and we move it over to the environmental reserve account, and we use it toward stormwater testing, and that is done annually. So we put that funding aside so that it doesn't interfere with the general fund. And then that way, if it comes in less, then we have that funding set aside for future years. Now, on the equipment reserve piece, there's one line here on the screen that says equipment reserve, but the equipment reserve really makes up what we're setting aside. It's $649,000, and that makes up the equipment that's needed for our parks and public works, our fire department, our police department, and our Valhalla course. So, and what you'll see in the pages in your binder for Parks and Recs, that their portion is actually $330,000 out of the $649, and you'll see what makes up that amount. Some of it is to pay down a 5-year lease that we have on the sweeper, so we're in the 5th year of that payment, and then actually another 50 grand for Valhalla equipment leasing that we also do there. And then some other, you'll see a Toro Field Pro baseball fields. So there's a piece of equipment for that. And then the plow truck, we did a 2-year lease on that, and that was $120,000. And then Chris has their 10 grand for public service. So you'll see on the following page of that, the breakdown of what that looks like for 2026, of where all those payments are going.
Can I just ask a housekeeping question? So what is the threshold to which we're validating what a capital improvement might be? Like, is there a financial threshold? Like what, just thinking about something like Valhalla, the sprinkler system, like I don't see that on here, but why, but just trying to understand how we get to the capital, it being in the capital cost center.
So we try to look at more of equipment that we know that is, I would say 3 to 5, 7-year equipment that
Okay.
we would plan on buying every 5 to 7 years.
Okay.
Something like the sprinkler system, it's going to be a more heavier lift, so that would be more advantageous to do it through a bond.
Okay.
To pay for that and have that done through that process instead.
Okay.
And so you'll see too with the fire department, they have a lot of equipment. So one of the things that we've done a few years back was when I first started, it almost seemed like the capital fund was a set amount, and then everyone had to kind of validate.
Apply almost.
Oh, yeah, apply for what needed to be like now that needed to be purchased. And that just created this constant, the expenses going up and down depending on if we had a good financial year or a bad financial year. So one of the things we started doing is we sat down with police, fire, and Chris kind of already had this process down, but what we would do is say, okay, let's look at everything you need, how much that costs, how often do we need to replace it, so we can determine from year to year how much we should be saving in order to always be able to have some form of savings to make those purchases, knowing that some years we may have a whole bunch of money still saved up because we're not quite there to purchase anything, but then some years we'll be in a negative. So basically, we're investing in ourselves and putting that money and setting it aside for when we need to make those purchases, so that we're not constantly looking at our capital, constantly going in a up and down. Kind of like how it was to smooth it out, kind of like what we did with the bond, how I told you wanted to try to set up a reserve account, so if we had a big bond year, we would have money set aside to kind of smooth out that expense from year to year on the general fund, so we wouldn't have spikes in our budget that year.
Okay.
So this is the same process we use for our capital, where we kind of try to smooth it out. So we try to say, okay, this is how much right now we feel that we should be saving from year to year in order to do that. This will allow all of those, like I said, fire, police, Public Works and Parks and Valhalla, to make those purchases without making spikes in the general fund's budget from year to year.
Okay. Go ahead, Bob.
I don't have a problem putting aside money, but I think when I hear the play out of 5-year, 7-year, I think I want to see, what those pieces of equipment are and how we can extend that life. And I want to make sure they're still applying for their funds, and it's not there's no automatic, just because we've put this money aside doesn't mean you automatically get it. It may be taken and given to somebody else.
Yeah,
Is that?
and that's what we do. Like, so for instance, like if a vehicle gets really old and it costs more to keep it up than to keep it, Chris will look at a way to either go out for auction with it and try to get as much money as we can for it. And then that money actually goes back into that account, whatever money we make off of the sale of that, to contribute towards the continuous savings of the capital equipment or vehicles. Or it's used, like, for instance, the police will use it, and will use it as their what do you call it, trade-in. They'll do it as a trade-in, so it reduces the value, the cost. And so, like, for instance, most of the police vehicles, that cost is minus the trade-in value that they feel they can get for the police vehicle at the end of their 4 years.
And Councilor Vail, to your question as well, there's some equipment nowadays that you may get longer terms out of. Thinking larger rolling stock at fire, for instance, you look at it instead, your rescues you run the wheels off from, but a lot of your engines just don't get the mileage. So it comes down to, instead of having a 20-year life, you may be able to get 30 years, for instance, out of that. And maybe a refurb at one certain point in time where you're just refreshing seals and doing other onboard equipment, replacing that and refreshing it. So a lot of that's under conversation. Then if you look at a piece of equipment in 1 year, you say, well, it's still in good shape. There's no reason to dispose of it at that point. You can push that a year, maybe 2 years, and it's still on the plan, but you may find that you can get further life out of it. So you keep planning for its replacement, but if you don't have to, then it's not just planned replacement just for the sake of replacing it.
Right, the mindset should be we'll replace it when we have to, not because you want to.
Yeah, use it till it's done, basically.
And what this has also allowed us to do is that if, for example, putting the savings aside, if something comes up, again, like we're extending it on one side and something ends up breaking, or we have an accident on the other end with a vehicle that's totaled, it allows us to replace that, and then that replacement gets pushed off, because obviously now it's getting replaced earlier, and everything gets shifted based on all of that as well. And that's kind of why I also provided this form. This is the fund balance. This is, let me see if I can get it up on the screen. This is,
Wrong one. I like the font size on this, Helene. It's good.
These ending fund balances are before we make contributions to them.
yes.
Where are you looking, Bob?
And so this is trying to give you an idea of, like, so the very top line is your general fund. And whenever I tell you that, like, we take it and we move it to another fund, this is where we're moving it. And so you can see, like, the activity, and this is the activity for FY24, just so you see where we landed at the end of the fiscal year of '24. And then I would provide you at the end of '25 how all the funds did as well. But this gives you an idea of when we're saying we're saving to invest in ourselves. This is how we do that, and where we put the funds aside, how much we've used from that fund, and how much we might have put back, or how much we had carried forward from the year before. So this kind of gives you an overview of all the other funds as well. So you can see the line that says capital equipment, it's kind of highlighted kind of greenish. That's where all of that, what we're talking about today, those items would go into that account, which you can see like for FY '24, that last year they transferred in 630,000. Then you see the 496, that's either from the sale of equipment or either insurance loss, claims, what we received from a loss claim maybe. Not quite sure. For FY '24, I would have to look into where that 496 came from. But then we spent 855,000 out of that account. But we still ended up with $1.1 million for our capital equipment. And like I said, this is, some years we'll have some of the, depending on each department, they might have a running negative balance, and some departments may have a running positive, but we lump all the money together, and I have a way of making sure I can determine how much each department actually has left in their balance.
Go ahead, Ron.
Just a question, and might be for Helene or Chris. The fire department capital equipment has been 46.5 for 3 years, and now it's jumped to 71,000, a jump of 25,000.
So I would love to go through that one. This one's a special one. So what happened here is, for a long time, the fire department was not really funded at the level they needed to be. And so you'll see down below, what they actually need to be funded at is $147,000 a year in order to be able to maintain all this equipment from year to year. This is how much they need to really put aside every year in order to maintain all of this equipment on this lifespan that they plan on having. So the plan is, the first year was going from what we were used to do, which was, you mentioned the 46,500, and then bringing them up to 71,000. And then basically, what the plan was depending on how we did with end of the year, was make up the difference of the 71 and the 147,000 with a year-end transfer, just so that we weren't hitting the general fund all at once.
Okay.
Then the second year, the plan is, so we would be funding that at 50%. Then the second year in 2027, the plan is to then bring it up slightly again and bring it to $97,000 a year, and then looking at year-end transfer and making that difference up of the 100 to the 147. And then, so basically, it would be a 4-year plan to kind of smooth them into where we need to be funding them at, just so that it wasn't a huge hit to the general fund all in 1 year. And then just using year-end transfers to help make up that difference so that we wouldn't impact the tax rate by trying to do it all at once.
Okay, thank you.
The paving, obviously that's a large pickup for this year, but I understand it's probably a little wonky because it's maybe not necessarily reflective of what is actually happening, right? It's more saving.
Yeah,
Would
so-
we, go ahead.
So I would love to talk a little bit more about the paving budget as well, because that one actually, so last year, the way it was introduced to the council for the paving budget was that we were going to, there was end of year from general fund, as well as, the way it was kind of provided, it was to reduce what the hit was to the general fund, but you can't take from the general fund
Yeah.
if you're already in the general fund. So you can't really kind of show that reduction per se in a budget when you're taking it from fund balance. So what ended up happening was,
Oh, you gonna pee like Remy?
the paving budget ended up being, the paving,
My granddaughter.
Hey, Ron.
look at Bob's making sure he's not.
Do we want to take a pause so you can watch the video?
I should.
I'm okay.
It might be more important.
It is more important. I love it. All right, sorry. Keep going, Helene.
So what we're trying to do, so what ended up happening because of that, the way that was kind of introduced, it kind of underfunded the paving budget last year.
Okay.
And so you can even see that on this fund balance sheet that right now, at the end of FY '24, CIP roads was is under
a
by
million.
897,000. So the plan is actually to transfer about $1.4 million from TIF in order to make up the loss that we have in the CIP roads, and making sure that it's funded enough so that Chris can continue doing all the projects that he was planning on doing, which you have all the detail for that in your binder as well.
Okay. Also, I know asphalt's cheap right now, so Chris, any savings we'll see there?
We do. They have what they have is a paving de-escalator and escalator.
Okay.
So we will see some savings. We've got a lot of paving that we didn't do last year.
Okay.
So we should see some savings from that because we were at a higher rate last year than we are this year.
Okay.
I don't know exactly what that
Yeah.
would be. But
It's better to be modest in that scenario, so we can do what we need to do and not get behind again.
right, and any savings we usually have, we try to make up or do other projects to
Yeah.
try to, because we do bare bones with the paving, so.
Okay. Bob, did you have a question? No? Andrew?
Just real quick on the Greeley Road, the box culvert, how long is that going to be? And I'm asking because I would like to eventually see Greeley Road have, at the very least, some sort of shoulder that's more than an inch. And ideally, a sidewalk going down there, so we could have like a nice loop from the center of town to Twin Brook and back without getting hit on the road if you're walking. But is that culvert going to be long enough to support something like that in the future, or would it be we put the culvert in, and then if we decide and we have the money to do something like that, we've got to redo or add on or something like that to actually have that go over the culvert on either side of it?
We designed these culverts for a wider shoulder because the plan is to get these 3 box culverts replaced over the next year or so and then go in and rehab and repave Greeley Road. But we did take in consideration that we want paved shoulders on Greeley Road. They won't be wide enough for a sidewalk in that area, but it would be the same width as the shoulders moving up and down the road. So yes, it was, to answer your question, yes, we did plan ahead with these box culverts to be wider.
Great, thank you.
Any other questions on capital? Oh, Bill.
Put this to rest. I had talked to Matt about it, and I remember when the fire chief was from stuff like that. We had talked about 3 ambulances.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think it would be really good to have a discussion about this. I know that the 3rd one is over to the fairgrounds. So their cost, it would seem that with the call volume also, that maybe think about 2 instead of 3. And I understand that he wanted to get one, and this is just for discussion, just
Mm-hmm.
make a discussion out of this, that he wanted one every 3 years so that they could get a 9-year life out of it and rotate through. But, I think look at real mileage and look at what these these F-550s and F-450s take. They're more maintenance for one. I know we had them at Old Orchard. They're more maintenance for one, that's fine. But they also last a bunch longer because of their makeup and easy to rebox. So, and I know that, right now that it's a federal thing really more than a company thing about how long it takes to get a new ambulance. It's not really the company companies that are holding back, it's more the government that's holding back. That's why you have a fire truck that takes 3 years to build now. But I just think it's worthy of a discussion, because once you outfit these things, you know, they're pushing between $400,000 and $500,000 a pop. For a call volume that's, you know, for an EMS call volume that's, you know, 800 or 900, something like that, if that. And mutual aid and future consideration for consolidation.
Go ahead, Bob.
To follow on that, the importance of consolidation and the importance of standardization across the ranks, you know, will help drive that cost back. It'll help drive the timeline back. If everybody's buying a stock truck, if you will, and there's no room for, I want to have this or I want to have that, if, you know, departments across the state are standardization of equipment, it just helps everybody.
Yeah, there isn't any of that right now. I mean, you know, an ambulance is an ambulance. It all depends on how you stock it, and whether or not, you know, you have a automatic CPR machine on there or not. Some do, some don't. You know, your monitors are running 50,000. You know, your loaders for the stretcher, you know, they're running 50,000 or more now. And add that to the ambulance, and it's, having one kind of sitting around or rotating through, it's just something to consider. I'm just throwing it out for consideration. Do
Yeah.
what you want to do. But to me, it seems just a little extravagant these days to have a third ambulance kicking around.
Yeah.
That's all.
Matt, do you have any insight into the kind of thought behind the 3 ambulances? Has that been a discussion?
Counselor Cop?
On the last ambulance that we bought is a Ford F-550, and the reason that we went with that is we figured that we could change out the chassis and keep the ambulance body, put a new chassis underneath it.
Yeah.
It's a matter of just jacking the body up and driving a new truck underneath it. The bodies never wear out, it's the drivetrain that wears out.
Yep.
The theory behind buying this Ford was because we could do that, and we'll see how it works. I mean, I know there was the thing, I think it was $400 and something thousand, and like he says, the expense is the body, not the chassis. I mean, you can go buy a new 550 chassis for $70,000, but then the ambulance body is another $350,000.
Yeah.
So the theory when we bought this one was that at its end of its life, we could actually jack the body up, put a new chassis underneath it, continue on.
And it would be, in theory, more cost effective.
Well, hopefully, that was the plan, but
Do we have any metrics on the, like, usage of, like, the rotation of the 3 units, or, like,
I think the third unit that's at the fairgrounds is the oldest
yeah,
that we have, and that's kind of like the emergency break glass
okay,
type of operation. It's also handy during the fair, because those are call-outs, so they're staffed not with, like, line folks on that day, so they would come out for an overtime shift to staff that when they're up there. And then
Yeah.
we're looking at 9 to 12 years on replacement, not every 3
okay.
years.
Bob, were you gonna say something?
So we had an organizational meeting last week with the four towns, and one of the comments that came out of that is that county dispatch can issue a response based on location, not by the town. And so I think if we all get on board with that, we can be dispatching an ambulance that is the right ambulance in the right area for the right time. And county dispatch was explained by the county manager. In fact, he's going to be here tonight, so I don't want to steal his thunder, but I think that we can do better.
I think we did have to Councilor Vale's point as well, that we had a very robust discussion last week for about a little over 2 hours
Yeah,
in Yarmouth about that, and part of it is, we could find efficiencies if we had everyone in the area on the same dispatch
Yep.
operation, because there's a lot more data that they can, I mean, they can get that dialed right down to the location, and deploying of response could also be more efficient, and I think there was a high level of interest there as far as coordination and collaboration, so it was a good conversation as far as we could go, and I think we could find ways, because as part of the conversation the other night was, no one gives a darn about what the name on the side of the vehicle says when they show up. You just need to have somebody there.
Yeah.
So it's a question of, like, communities working together and finding ways to do that, as well as getting, looking at training operations and deploying and looking at capital needs for all different towns, and a lot of those areas that I think those conversations are very live. It's just a question of advancing them and not
Yeah.
just having a conversation level and start to get some deployment to happen.
So, just like circling back to the comment about the ambulance being at the fairgrounds, I don't want to hold an ambulance to have it for one of the 52 weeks of the year. So, I guess I wonder if that's truly what's happening there. Like, why are we holding on to it?
And I can get more from the chief as well
Yeah.
to explain the rationale behind it, but if one goes down,
Yeah.
it's not a bad thing to have redundancy because you own it.
Yeah, but are we going to the fairgrounds to get it? If there's an emergency, is that where it's kept?
Yeah, and you have to remember, we're also getting a revenue share for the fire detail to be there,
Okay.
as well as whenever they're at Twin Brook, whenever there is a fire detail, they take that ambulance with them.
Yeah.
As to have the equipment there for them for that purpose.
Okay.
So it's being paid for through that process.
Okay. I don't know. Does anybody else have any other thoughts on it?
And to the devil's advocate, you have mutual aid.
Yeah.
Mutual aid cheaper than, they came in here over 100 times this year.
Sorry, Ron, what were you?
That should change, right, with more people on board.
Yeah.
That was,
One of the old ambulances is a diesel,
Yeah.
which is a frequent flyer back to the GM dealer.
Yeah.
And the other one is a gas job, which is bulletproof and it's still running. And I guess if you got rid of it, what are you gonna get? $10,000? It's,
Can get that. Yeah.
you're not even gonna get that for it. So it's not costing you a lot of money to keep it.
Yeah.
If you got rid of it and decided you needed it, it's gonna cost you a boatload of money to replace it.
Yeah.
So,
I think that's definitely worth like a pipeline discussion of what is the plan
right.
for replacing it.
It basically is a backup right now, and I know
Yeah.
we loaned it to another town here a while ago because theirs was down, and I
Yeah.
believe that we were compensated for them using it
Yeah.
as well. So it's not like it's a huge asset, but there's not a lot of value there
Yeah.
either. So
just remind you that you have 7 ambulances in town.
Noted. Any other comments on this one? No? Any other comments on capital right now? Questions? Oh, what? Oh, yeah, of course.
Is there going to be a conversation, Helene, about adding to the fund balances before the end of the year?
Yeah, that will come towards the end of the year. We obviously haven't finished the year out, but that's usually, we wait to see how we landed for the year, and then we would bring that forward to the council, or through finance committee.
Would that be like June-ish, July-ish?
More like July-ish.
Okay.
Do we have in here schedule for like the paving going out? Did I just miss it? We got up through 26, we have the prior years, but sort of what are we looking to do for the next 5 years? What are those plans and costs?
I have a paving plan that's on the website.
Okay, it's not in here.
Right,
so
it's not in here.
Okay, I didn't miss it in here, okay.
So it goes out about 10 years, and then we rotate it around, so. We do have a plan moving forward. Sometimes we stick with it, sometimes we don't. It's the same as the capital.
We're just painting the Golden Gate Bridge. We start at one end, work our
Right.
way, get to the other end, and then
Then we
Start over.
start back, and then we try to fill in roads that are falling apart in between. So we do have a plan. just so we have something in our
Right.
mind, what our goal is, and we try to stick with it. We've done pretty well for the past 10 years.
And is that roughly the same amount of money? Like, are we trying to sort of say, all right, we're spending, 1.2 every year, give or take, kind of thing? Or is it more that we've done, these are just the roads that need, and so some years it might be a lot based on the roads that need to get repaired or repaid versus, the next year we just have fewer roads in that cycle?
Yeah, we built the plan based on about $700,000 a year, and sometimes that does change. This year, I kind of shot it back a little bit, only because I knew this was going to be a challenging year with the way we ended last year. So I kind of pulled some of the paving back and looked at some of the projects we needed to do. But usually I try to shoot for about $700,000 to $800,000 a year in paving.
All right, thank you.
Any other questions about capital right now? All right, we can move into revenues.
Sure. So for revenues, as you remember, we were overall looking at a 6% increase on our revenues from the prior year. That's about $500,000. So on the highlights for that, this is everything, right now, this is review of revenues, everything other than property taxes. So as you know, right now, our assessor's still finalizing those numbers to get us closer to where we think will be with valuation and everything. So, but the major highlights on the increase for the revenue is we looked at our motor vehicle excise tax, and we wanted to true it up to where we were falling, and seeing that we were trending more at a $2.5 million. So we brought that, where 25 was budgeted at 2.3. So we brought that up to about $192,000. The Outer Islands property tax, that increase is basically based on their property values as well. So that there was a slight increase there. Under licenses and permits, we asked our CEO, our code enforcement officer, to review building permits and electric permits to see where he felt we would be this upcoming year. And so he did a slight increase there, increased building permits by 25,000. I think that was mostly due to the new development that we know that we're going to be having some permits being pulled for that. The other adjustment we made was in our intergovernmental revenues was for our state revenue share. Went up slightly so we increased that about $31,000. And then there were some adjustments based on the share for our North Yarmouth Rec and Library. We will have to do, so the share is based on the year that's closed. So that's why we can affirm what that amount is going to be. So that's where that adjustment came from. Their share of the cost that the general fund had from the library was an increase of $78,000, and for the rec department was about $12,000. And then we moved down under charges for services. So this would be things that we try to build for. You can see we did an adjustment of about 20% on our revenues for rescue billing. So we had a conversation with the fire department in regards to determining what it is that our service is, we charge for our service. And we do it through a third party administrator that does that billing for us. And they let us know that we were kind of on the low end of billing out to the insurance companies for that. So we did sign off on adjusting that rate to be in line with our surrounding towns. So we're projecting that will increase our revenues by 20% this coming year. So you'll see that we increased that 40,000. And then we also did an adjustment to the bags because we plan on increasing that, the fees. That was a fee structure we determined that had not been adjusted, and we were again, on the lower side, when we compared ourselves to our surrounding towns. And then we saw that the brush passes were actually slightly higher in what we were actually receiving than what we budgeted, so we did a slight increase there of $4,000. What else on the big ones here? Our
Mooring fees?
Yes, we did do an adjustment as well to our mooring fees, and that was to offset the increase that we saw on the expense side for our budget, to make sure we weren't operating at a loss there.
Good.
And then when we talked about Valhalla, you'll see here where all the increases for Valhalla, as well as our rec department, those increases overall attributed as well to the increase in our revenues. Over the prior year, we did become still conservative, but a little bit more aggressive on where we were actually coming in at, and trying to budget more in line with what our actuals were. And then there was an adjustment you'll see under other revenues for investment earnings, and it seems, I think in FY 25, for some reason, they budgeted about $200,000 in investment earnings, but we don't put our investment earnings in the general fund. And you can see that in the previous years, there was nothing ever budgeted or actuals ever there. So there's just a correction there. So you'll see that that revenue went down by $200,000 on that. And then a slight adjustment on our impact fees, just to be more in line to where we think we're going to be this upcoming year. And then the other items are very small, so we don't really budget much there. The shared employee reimbursement, that's the portion we anticipate to receive from North Yarmouth and Yarmouth for our animal control officer. That's what that $61,000 there is for.
Okay. Knowing that we made some kind of like adjustments to kind of get up to standard with some of our surrounding communities on like kind of variable fees, I don't think we'll have as much opportunity next year. So to make big adjustments for, I feel like this has kind of offset some of our increases. So I really think we need to put our heads together for next year to make sure that we're finding other revenue opportunities to ensure that we can keep this as low as it is right now. So just some food for thought. Do you agree, Helene?
I do.
Okay.
We're gonna put doggy bags down there. We're gonna make a lot of money.
You guys think I'm joking?
No, I'm not. I put that forward to the rec committee.
Sorry, go ahead, Ron.
$2 a bag.
Helene, personal property tax, where would that come under? And I guess
That would be part of the property taxes.
okay,
which
what
is-
I'm getting at, solar fields, personal property, I assume, taxable?
They are,
Somebody asked me that, and I don't know, I mean,
personal solar stuff, there's an exemption that exists
There
at
is,
the state
okay.
level, but the town receives reimbursement for that. So the assessor will capture the value for what it'll be. Say, for instance, if someone does rooftop solar, or if they do that pedestal solar that's down the
Right.
street, they put a value on that, and they report it to the state, and then the state
okay.
reimburses the town for a percentage of that. So there is some revenue that comes from
Okay.
it, but it's all reconciled.
That was
with the,
somebody asked me that, and I didn't know the answer to it. And the only other question that I had was on building permits. In '23, we were at 179,000, actuals 107. Are we that far off?
let's see, that's closing quickly.
I was gonna say, I'm hoping,
Yeah.
it looks like around town that it must be.
Yeah, talking with Mr. Longley about that on building permits. Yeah, we had started off a little bit, well, this year he was concerned that it was gonna be, based on last year's activity was kind of like a comeback year. This year, the second half of '25 has been, or the first half of '25, second half of fiscal '25
Right.
has grown strongly
That's what
across the board, electrical.
Riding
plumbing.
around town, that's why I asked the question. I mean, you see, I don't know if anybody's been by Blackstrap lately, but if you look down in there, there's 9 foundations in.
Yep, there's 20 permits have been issued there
20.
so far.
No
Yep,
kidding,
so,
yep.
yeah, there's a, I mean, in my morning run before work, there's a lot more traffic going into
Oh,
that.
yeah, there
than
is.
there were. Yeah, it's amazing. I mean,
Yeah.
and then there's, we don't anticipate, and that's one of the bigger reasons for growth this year on building permits, because they're not letting any sunset on that. They're
Okay.
building as fast as they can get in there, so I think that's, so we're gonna see that reflect in the building permit revenues for this year.
Perfect.
And electrical has grown in the past 2 months. We've seen
Right.
a strong increase on that as well, so.
Yep. Good.
So Counselor Kopp, to your point, when this was printed, we printed these in, March?
Oh,
So right now, I just took a look where we are, building permits, we're at 154,000. So
going strong.
Yeah, we exceeded our
February
budget
was
for.
very strong. Yeah.
Perfect.
Yeah.
In FY '18, the building permit revenue was only $68,000. And so
Yeah.
we're $100,000 more in 6, 7, 8 years,
Right.
7 years. And
It's these damn carpenters in town. but
Bob Vale.
He didn't hear that.
Yes, yeah.
Matt. The article might have been a lie or it might have been gone, but is there a bill put forth to get rid of excise taxes completely?
No,
Okay, just checking. I've seen that
There may
flying
be-
around a couple places, and I mean,
there may be one in there that I would say, there's always something brought forward by
Right.
request where someone
Yeah.
doesn't like it, but no, they've, yeah,
okay. I
that's
figured.
still going to be there.
Denise, we had a legislative meeting at work today. They're at over 1,800 bills they printed,
Yeah.
and they still coming. And they're supposed to be going out of session shortly, so.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Time's ticking.
Yeah, there's that, there's discussion about, on fuel tax, because that's been the big number that's been going down with the advent of, more fuel-efficient cars, and so the state's over a barrel.
Yeah.
In a lot of ways with their annual budget, their revenues are challenged, and that's why, you see a lot of revenues, but yeah, as Council Reed said, there's a ton in there, but they can only get so much done.
All right, sounds good.
Any other comments about revenues? Not, we can move into TIF. Sorry, Helena, I went backwards, so I apologize.
Okay. I honestly realized that I don't have something I could put up on the screen, so you'll have to use your binder for TIF. So with TIF, what I try to do is I try to figure out where we are and what, based on everything that we did in the general fund, what our expense is gonna look like for FY '26. So for FY '26, we're looking at, based on keeping everything the way it has been, we're looking at the total expense being almost 4.4 million. And it's really hard to dictate where we're going to land on revenues, because it's really going to be really dependent on where the value lands from the assessor, as well as where our mill's going to land. So I try to do a best guess when I did revenues. So I don't want to pay too much attention to the revenue part right now. I'm just trying to look at where we are going to be expense-wise. This includes $1.4 million that we talked about earlier, going into, to adjust for our, to assist with our capital plan, as well as $600,000 for the Route 100 Range Road, the shaving of that road, so making it more visible. 22,000, thank you, Town Manager Sturgis, for, I think originally we had budgeted about 750,000 there, and somehow our miraculous town manager got it down to $22,000. So, and then we, and then the rest of it will be to pay towards our rebates, our bonds, which I also provided, since we were discussing bonds for the general fund, I did provide you in your packet today the bond schedule for the TIF fund, so you can see what that looks like going out in future years. Principal is an interest, and then basically all of the employees that we have that kind of have charged partially to the general, to the TIF, where you see some of the employees are charged to the general fund. We also, due to economics, how they participate in some form of economic development, we take a portion of their salary and benefits and bring it over to the TIF fund. So that's the majority of what constitutes it, the TIF fund. As you can see, I also provided kind of a projection going out with, of course, many assumptions in there, but based on the assumptions, this assumption is based on allowing the TIF District 1 to expire, because I wasn't going to provide, this is your, like, that scenario at this time. We would start being above the line, being no longer in the red by FY 2031. But you can see we quickly start earning to the point where you're going to have a fund balance of about $9.2 million if we just stay at the course that we're on currently. And again, there are some just assumptions in there. So this fund is honestly for projects that provide to economic development. So I did put in your front, just showing you how that red line is your fund balance, and kind of shows that we're underwater at the moment. So we're borrowing against ourselves, but we quickly come out of that if we do nothing else, if we stay on course. So, but obviously this money is to be used for projects, bonding, in order to get those projects moving quicker, if you would prefer to do it that way. So this again is just based on those three major capital items moving into 2024 at the moment.
What would be a healthy TIF fund balance? Because when you think about, FY 2034 being at a balance of 9 million, that seems excessive. So like, what's the goal for like maintenance and then spend it? You know what I'm trying to say? Like, how much should we be really keeping in there?
Shouldn't keep anything in there. You
Okay.
want to be zero.
So,
Yeah, at the
Supposed to be
termination, you want to
using
be
and
fully.
investing in the community.
Yeah, at the termination, Chair Douglas, you want to be, you want to have it fully expended.
okay.
It's just, the way that the town's been operating on that has been a fair way to go at it, to be negative, knowing that you have that growth to get there, because
Yeah.
other communities I've seen, I mean, when you get to the end, if you've got a significant fund balance, then it's kind of like you're spending for the sake of spending, where in this case, if you can be thoughtful and deliberate about it, you can plan your revenues from that and expenditures and tie them in accordingly, so you can accomplish that without having an impact on the taxpayer and the tax rate. Meanwhile, providing the benefit to the community in a lot of different ways. But ultimately, you want to be fully expended at the end. And it's better to be closer to that
Yeah.
flat line than it is to have a significant fund balance above it.
So if that's the anticipated way to operate this fund, right? So then beyond, the way I read this, beyond FY30, we don't have planned expenditures based on revenues, right? Okay. So then that needs to be something that there's a council discussion about, like, what is the plan post FY 2030?
Yeah, so right now, the only thing that's kind of planned in here is using funding for continuing using it towards paving,
Yep.
taking a bond out for the radio tower, taking a bond out for once we get going on the Route 100 roundabout.
Okay.
And then the other one is looking into bonding the two of the fire vehicles in the future.
Okay.
And bonding that as well.
Did you have a question? No? Okay.
Councilor Chair Douglas,
Yeah.
one other item too, the TIF 1 discussion as far as extending it, that's another whole
Yeah.
conversation in the future as well because of the way, and you hope that one bill gets, if there's one bill that gets through the legislature is to amend it so towns can understand if they are going to use extending a TIF for either transit or affordable housing, get that to add the and or in there. So that, that is part of that discussion going forward. But looking at that and having to decide eventually, what you could use those funds for. And there's other questions that may arise from that.
Okay.
And then the ability to also, if there is extension to, I want to say ratchet them up or down depending upon the amount that you want to capture each year. So you can use some to go back towards the general fund operating or ratchet it up and down that way based on each year's need for the town.
Okay. Okay. So go ahead, Bob. Yep.
There was a piece in the paper, I think it was, and they were talking about potential station there in West Falmouth, and I would hope that we would be on top of those talks, because we do have parallel tracks and they don't. And it would seem to me that we could leverage that as a cost savings and potentially get our station first.
We are on their radar. I mention it to Patricia Quinn every time I see her at a PAX meeting and have that discussion, say, hey, we may have something to bring to the table that other towns don't, and trying to get their, just keep front of mind with them.
Okay. Any other questions about this segment? Comments? None?
No, all good.
Well, then that concludes our budget meeting for today.
Down some more wraps.
Madam Chair, if I
Yeah.
may, I wanted to thank the council
Yeah.
on behalf of Helene, myself, and Chris for your, it's my first budget here with all of you, and it's been a good experience. The questions we appreciated that a lot by having a vibrant discussion about a lot of different elements, and you had two brand-new counselors coming on this year, and to get through it, I thought the process was great. We really appreciated the thoughtful questions. We're working on for next year to have an even better, more expansive and understandable budget process, and with a lot more that we can push out there. So we're excited about that. But we really appreciated the support throughout this, as well as the creativity to work through it from where we started. Back in January, we were looking at like 17% to whittle down to, delivering this book to y'all at just over 5%, and now getting down to about 2.7 by the end of it. It shows that it's a live, these are live documents that we worked really hard to get to this point. But ultimately, I know our biggest concern coming into the budget process was unsteadiness and unsure about what the economic future was going to be. And I think that's paid off to get to it, coming at it with a conservative approach to budgeting this year. Our big concern is the taxpayers.
Yeah.
You want to provide the best services we can, but at a reasonable and responsible cost. So that was kind of our guidepost that we hitched this budget to, and we're trying like heck to get there every day. And if there's more that comes between now and finalized approval by the council, we'll be taking every effort we can to find efficiencies up until that day. So, and still after it's implemented, we always try to save money too,
Yeah.
because it's about the bottom line when it comes down to it. but I want to thank you all for that and your hard work during the budget season, so.
Thank you. Go ahead, Denise.
I forgot, because the communications budget's on the very last page behind TIP. I have some questions on here, more software licensing questions. And one of them is a question probably for Whitney, but I know we're paying for Canva, and it looks like we're paying for Canva Pro maybe based on the price, which I know they have content planners for scheduling out social media posts, but we're also paying like $1,100 for a social media platform scheduler. So I'm wondering if Canva can do both, or if that's something that is limited to where we need Hootsuite on top of it for scheduling posts.
While Whitney's walking up there, special thanks to you, Helene, because nobody stumped you.
I mean, I can definitely look into the content planner that Canva has. We're going to have to look at upgrading our Canva probably within the next couple of years anyway, because the level that we're at right now, it's based on the number of emails you're sending. And right now we're at like just under 4,300 for the crier alone, and 5,000 is the cap for what we have right now, the level we have. The reason I've stuck with Hootsuite, because there are multiple out there, is that it keeps a year's worth of our history. So I'm able to go back and see, and each year I've been doing this, I'm able to go back and see what we had for the last 12 months and analytics on that and what things we posted each month.
Cool.
So the switch over to a new one is kind of a bummer because you lose a little bit of that history. That's really the reason that I've stuck with it.
Okay.
But I can certainly look into what Canva has for one. I will be very honest, I haven't looked at it because I primarily use it just for the newsletter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay. Also, Archive Social, it's like $7,500. What is that? What do we use it for?
So that archives all of our social media pages. It's essentially the best way to look at it is like an insurance policy for any FOA requests. I can go in there and put in like a keyword and pull up any social media on any of our social media pages that has included that word, or that phrase or that person or whatever it may be if somebody comes to the town manager asking for information.
Okay. Cool. Thank you.
Councilor Thorson, it's a necessary evil.
Yes.
And
Makes
they
sense.
kind of have us where they want us because it's impossible to, if you were going to try to grab that from any of the social media pages, it's a nightmare.
It's a pain. Yeah,
So
I get that.
they've got a good product that they know they can sell.
Filling that niche and
Really?
charging what they want. Yeah.
Matt, you talked about the process. Was there anything that you did in Cape Elizabeth that was different that you did with their budget that you would like to see us look at? Or is there anything that they did you didn't like, or that we seem to do a little bit better? I'm just interested if we can improve the system.
I think this, looking back over the past 3 months, I think this system was well done because there's a lot more council interaction. We would get it done in 2 nights in Cape. And that's not a challenge. So don't take it, don't take it that way. They would go through and every department would come in and do, like when you started doing this years ago, you'd do that Super Saturday and everybody would come in, they'd do those presentations of it. This is kind of more, I don't know, I think the council has a higher level of understanding. A lot of it was routine, it was muscle memory for that. So I like this. This is more time, but I think is more thoughtful, and I think it's more open. So I like this.
4 Saturdays.
Yeah. Okay. Well, yeah.
This is much reduced.
Yeah.
I like that. Doing it before a council meeting or just on a workshop on a weekly basis. I think it's been a good process. I like it. I like this more. And then having. Doing a lot of the leadership side that Helene provides and Chris as well. Having my 3 right hands basically here to do that work it's been really is a good process, I think.
Last fall, we we as a council, last fall and early winter, had a couple personnel decisions. One was Helene and one was Ronnie, and I think this shows that we made the right decisions.
In spades, Councilor Eads, yep.
Mr. Stiles?
I'd like to say that I've enjoyed the process. I do have a couple, what I would say, constructive criticisms.
Yeah.
One, I think you should allow the public to have input, which you did not initially allow. You took questions from me on occasion, you took a question from Shirley on occasion, and you took them on Bill, but they weren't solicited.
Yeah.
They had to do that. So I would ask in the future for you to open it limitedly to the public. For example, I noticed that we're paying in excess of $1 million a year on road paving. I would have asked you, at $1 million a year, would you consider bonding to do as much road paving as you can and have $1 million a year? Don't know that you'd do it. Looked at before, but I'd look at it again. Secondly, I would have asked you, when you're buying equipment, is it possible, instead of buying equipment, use Falmouth or Yarmouth rather than we buy one? Everybody doesn't have to have the same piece of equipment, because as we said previously, there's ambulances all over the place.
Yeah.
Equipment can be all over the place. That's just a couple of things. And you probably have it under control, but
No.
as a citizen, I would ask that question.
I don't have it under control. I appreciate the feedback. It's helpful because I think there's a lot of community insights that bring up good conversation. So I don't disagree with you. I think that would be a good approach, and maybe that's something Matt and I can discuss offline, where maybe Monday we allow for public comment or discussion to be a part of that 5 o'clock meeting, since that'll kind of be the final, just kind of holistic discussion surrounding it, because I want everybody to marinate on it, see where we land, see if there's any other questions. I really want to make sure everyone feels like we're in a good place before we sign off on it. Is that something we can do on Monday? Yeah.
Sure, sure.
Okay.
Those right now. Can answer some of those right now.
What?
That we were all shooting for a 2% reduction in the budget.
Yes. Anything else? Bob?
I think Matt can answer the question about shared equipment.
Yeah.
That reflects back on the conversation we had last Thursday, or last Wednesday, rather.
Yeah, we did, we had talked about that, and I know Chris, Assistant Manager Bolduc and I have talked about it too, like Yarmouth, Falmouth, and Cumberland, we all have a problem with equipment operators right now. So that may be a conversation that we have to have more collaboration between towns in the future as well, and that could
Yeah.
be, covering certain sections of road up to a certain line, and crossing town lines, and looking at those types of options that we have in the future. The equipment purchases, I mean, on some of them, you can look at, certain large pieces you don't need to own. Certain
Yep.
large pieces you can lease for a 3-week period, a month period, if you needed let's say a grader or something along those lines, some heavy equipment. Gray, we used to rent an excavator, like a big excavator on occasion, just to, if we knew we had a big project coming up. So a lot of that, you can accomplish that by paying for it, but not having to, you don't have to own
Yeah.
the whole thing. So that's something that, we always want to look at.
Yeah.
And, you always want to look at the, want versus need is not just the conversation that we have at our own kitchen tables. It's something that we need to look at
Yeah.
municipally. It's like, okay, is that a need or is that a nice to have?
Yeah.
And you always want to look at that and have it through that prism. We tried that a lot this year.
Yeah. It's one of those things where you start to wonder, like, what are the metrics you're using to understand, like, the frequency at which you need it versus owning it and maintaining it versus, leasing it annually for, whatever span of time you need. Yes, Steve?
Unrelated, back to Mr. Stiles' comment. I watched the last budget meeting from home, and it was very hard when there would be public comment, but nobody would go up to the mic, and so it was really hard. I'd have to crank it up, and then I
Yeah.
hope I don't deafen myself
That's
when you
my
guys start
fault.
talking again.
Yeah.
But what I mean by that is not like some 5-minute speaking limit or whatever, but I'm wondering if in the future, maybe at the end of the cost center, after we've all discussed and kind of got those questions out of the way, if there are still remaining public questions, to, before we move on, ask if there's a question. and, up to the mic so we can hear you and then move on. I don't know if that would end up prolonging things. I mean, we have 45 minutes left over. That stretched out over weeks might add up, but
Yeah,
something like that,
I
maybe.
think that's a great idea.
Thanks. I'm going to put it
like
on my
it.
resume that I just said that.
Okay.
Just kidding.
No, I think that's a great idea. I think, it is the community members' dollars, so I think allowing for some interaction or interaction in general, so through the process is more helpful, right, than when we get to the finish line, it's great to be able to ask questions, but I also think we're kind of at a place where we've done reductions we feel comfortable with and having like end of story conversations there. So I think that's definitely something we should consider doing next year.
Cool.
Go ahead.
My only suggestion over the process of previous years and this year, I think it went well, is I brought my book here from previous years, and in a lot of instances, having some little bit longer historical background is helpful because you start to see the trends, and you say that, if we just see the increase from one year to the next, it's a little difficult if you see a 5 or 6 year or even a 10-year spread. And I don't suggest we do this for every item, but some of this is helpful to see, and even just say, okay, what's the rate of inflation over the 10 years? Those are helpful ways to analyze a budget.
Yeah, I think from the big picture size too, Councilor Vail, there's some areas that you can look at those and large numbers, a lot of them especially, or look at certain departments that might have grown over time and try to look at the why. And yeah, it's interesting because in some of those years, and then looking at revenues too.
Right.
Back of 8-10 years ago, revenue sharing was through the floor. That's grown fortunately over the past 8 or 9 years from where it was. It bottomed out there for a while, and towns were just struggling, and that was impacting the tax rate municipally quite a bit just by having that reduced. So having that in there, and excise has grown, so that's been a benefit too for towns. But yeah, looking at a lot of those long-term pictures, if we can score those, I think it'd be good to have going into it.
Councilor Vail, also to your point, Town Manager Sturgis did this product that he was talking about for next year. We literally are dumping all of our data, all of our historical data into it. So we will be able to, this is a very manual process. This has to be hand entered in order to get that historical 3 years back. You will get your dream next year, I promise you.
What's that called? The software?
ClearGov.
ClearGov, cool. Yeah, nice.
Right.
It's going to be exciting next year.
Does that also have graphics? Like
Graphics.
Yes.
charts and
Graphics,
not
yep.
just
8x10 color photo pictures.
We can have pie charts too later.
Yeah.
It's going to have statistical data that it pulls from other websites about the community in comparison, all that stuff.
Can we put in there that we don't have any pie charts at all, ever?
No pie charts?
No pie charts.
Only pie charts?
No pie charts.
Only pie charts?
Pie is for eating, not for visualizing.
Well, there may be
I
a
think
blend,
pie charts
Councilor
are
Magoo.
All right, we've gotten into the weeds here.
I have one more question.
Oh,
on
yeah, go
ClearGov.
ahead.
Is it something that there'll be like dashboards that are shareable? Like we could have like read-only access to like mess around with things and look at visualizations without you having to print it
Not mess
out?
around with, but be able to.
What I mean is look at without
Yeah.
harming anything.
Drill down. It'll
Yeah.
have drill down ability, so you're not stuck with a big binder,
Okay.
carrying a binder around.
Cool.
And a lot of it's, we're just going to push it to the
Just went
website.
right over my head.
Cool.
So if you want to get
Alright.
a picture
So
during
every-
the course of the year, you can look at that and say, where are we sitting at on revenues in this
Dashboard
area?
is something I have in my car. Let's just keep it right there.
Same concept.
Same concept.
Awesome.
Okay, Bob.
Great. Well, just a reminder, the next meeting will be on Monday, May 5th at 5 p.m. prior to the town council meeting, and we will have more information that Whitney will circulate about how we'll format the public comment section of that. Otherwise, thanks so much, everyone. Thank you, Matt, Helene, Chris. Happy budget season.
Hoorah.
Yeah.